Whatever's out there on my farm isn't right. It started with a fire I saw one night. Just a small flicker over the ridge, like a campfire someone left burning. When I went to check, the fire was gone. Nothing but cold earth and silence. I should have left it alone. I've lived out here alone for years, miles from the nearest neighbors. My dog Max is my only company, a quiet friend who stays inside at night. The kind of dog you trust without thinking about it. But that night, something started to feel off. It had been going on for a few weeks, little things at first when I was out in the fields. Shadows darting in the corner of my eye. I'd glance and there'd be nothing there. Just the usual quiet farm noises. Wind, the occasional rustle of a deer in the brush. Then came the whispers, faint, just on the edge of hearing. No clear words, only fragments of sound, a soft murmur, a syllable repeated, like someone speaking behind a thick wall. It was unsettling, but I told myself it was just my mind playing tricks. When I brought it up to my neighbor and his wife, they looked at me like I was going crazy, and at times, I thought I was. The fire happened a few days ago. After sunset, I noticed a glow flickering beyond the ridge at the far edge of my property. It wasn't big, just a small, steady orange flicker, like a campfire left burning after a night of drinking, or a quick stop by hunters. Smoke curled thin against the darkening sky. I grabbed my jacket and flashlight and headed out. The air was heavy, the usual nighttime chorus of crickets and frogs oddly silent. The silence felt like the night was watching. I made my way down the slope to the clearing where the fire should have been, but there was nothing there. No smoke, no embers, no signs anyone had been there. Just the dried dirt and grass left undisturbed. I circled the clearing twice, flashlight beam cutting through the shadows. There was nothing but the cold night air. At midnight the next night, I heard this slow, intentional scratching at my back door. Max always scratched like that when he wanted in. I opened the door expecting to see him, and at first I thought it was him. The dog there was the same size, same markings, even the same tired eyes. But it wasn't Max. The eyes were empty, cold, and watching me in a way that made my skin crawl. I blinked and it was gone. I went inside and found Max curled up by the heater, fast asleep like always. Usually he barks when anything approaches the house. The fact that he was laying there silent disturbed me the most. I haven't told anyone about it. Who would believe me? The neighbors now give me the side eye whenever I'm over there, and I don't like going to town. I've seen the other dog a few times. It keeps trying to get in, but I won't let it. I always keep an eye on Max now, and I don't let him out alone. I wouldn't be able to tell them apart if I had to, and that worries me. I don't know what it is, but I'm certain it's been here longer than I thought. If this keeps up, I may have to move. That was the end of our first story. Let me know in the comments what you thought about it. Hit like and subscribe if you've enjoyed the content so far. And don't forget the notification bell. I'd love for you to send me your scary experiences to be read on this channel, whatever they might be. The sites to send them to are up on the screen. Now, there will be no further interruptions from me, and here are the rest of the stories. I don't usually work solo, but the assignment was simple. 2 nights monitoring hotspots in a cleared sector of the burn zone. The main crew had pushed through 3 days earlier. My job was simply to keep an eye on flare-ups and report if anything rekindled. It wasn't even an active fire anymore, only blackened land and ash drifting in the breeze. The spot was remote, past a fire road that had been bulldozed halfway up the ridge. I parked at the last point the truck could handle and packed in the rest of the way. The first thing I noticed was the coyote. It was maybe 40 yards out, perched on a scorched log. It was mangy and thin, with eyes watching me. Not pacing or spooked, simply sitting there tracking my movements with its head low and eyes still. I shouted, but it didn't bolt. I raised my arm and it flinched but didn't run. It followed me that first afternoon. It kept its distance, but I'd catch glimpses of it through the blackened trees, always off to my right. Once I thought it was gone, but then I spotted fresh tracks in the ash almost parallel to mine. A scavenger, I figured. Plenty of dead small game after a burn. I found the old camp just past the knuckled ridge where the trees had burned hotter than the rest. Nothing official, no markers, no fencing. But there was a cleared circle where fire crews had been staged. Black and soiled, bits of melted plastic. A folding shovel left behind, warped from the heat. The fire had come back through at one point and forced them out in a hurry. I set up on the opposite side of the circle, under a rock outcrop that still had some intact shade. I went through the radio check with dispatch at that time, and the signal was clean. As the sun began to set and I settled in, I thought to myself this was going to be an easy shift. That night, I couldn't sleep. There was constant movement around the camp, a rustle when the wind wasn't blowing, a branch creaking in the distance. Once I heard what sounded like a short yip. I figured it was the coyote from earlier coming to check me out. They're skittish animals, but curious. I scanned the darkness with my flashlight and caught nothing. The wind would shift and carry sound differently in the burn zone. That's what I told myself. I woke up feeling hungover, dry-mouthed and wired. I had slept with my boots on, laced and ready to go if needed. But my laces were now loose, which was weird. I figured I'd just been half asleep and restless. As I packed for a quick patrol, I noticed one of my gloves was missing. I checked all my gear twice. The left one was just gone. That about drove me crazy looking for it, but finally I had to give up and move on with my day. I told myself I had to be somewhere and I'd find it before I left. Halfway through the day and I hadn't seen the coyote again, which I didn't mind. There was something wrong with that one I couldn't place. Later that afternoon, I caught a shape on the ridge above camp. It was another firefighter. At least, that's what it looked like. Yellow Nomex shirt, helmet and a pack, standing still between two charred trees. I waved. They didn't wave back. I got the feeling they were observing me. I radioed dispatch. The signal popped and cracked. Dispatch came through in fragments and then nothing. I climbed to higher ground and tried again. Still nothing. I could see the ridge clearly by now, but the figure was gone. That night was worse. The movements around camp didn't sound like an animal anymore. They were quieter, closer, like someone trying not to be noticed. Branches creaked in rhythm. I didn't sleep. I stayed zipped in, one hand on my flashlight, the other on my knife. I told myself I was being paranoid, but every sound felt angled toward me. Sometime before dawn, I thought I heard talking outside the tent. The words were faint and not intelligible. Easy to mistake them as the wind, but a few clear-sounding words came through. I've been in raging fires so fierce I thought I wouldn't make it out alive, but the presence I felt scared me more than any of that. I held my breath for what felt like minutes before it stopped. By morning, my other glove was gone. So was the spare fire shelter I kept strapped to my pack. My radio had also been moved. I had left it right outside the tent, but I found it maybe 10 feet away. I didn't look for the missing items, but proceeded to pack up. My time was over and I wanted to get the hell out of there. I radioed dispatch again from higher ground. It was still dead. No echo, no static, just silence. I didn't even bother eating. I started walking back to the truck and figured I'd eat there. 3 miles down the trail and I saw the firefighter again. He was ahead of me, maybe 50 yards, just off to the side of the trail. He was walking, but not like a man walks. His gait was wrong, like someone trying to imitate a walk they'd only seen once. The arms swung too far, the knees lifted too high. His head was tilted slightly like he was studying each motion while doing it. I didn't stop. I didn't call out. I just kept moving steady like I hadn't noticed. I reached signal range an hour later. Dispatch finally came through. They were confused, said someone had radioed in on the second night using my call sign. The voice sounded like mine, but it wasn't right. Slurred, off, like I was trying to speak with my mouth full of water. The message was mostly gibberish, like I couldn't form the words, but a few phrases came through. Something about smoke, something about seeing myself. They assumed I'd been injured, maybe concussed or worse, and sent the next crew out early to check on me. But I was already on my way out by the time they reached the ridge. I didn't go back. I didn't ask questions. The crew that replaced me didn't report anything unusual, but I still think about that coyote, the way it watched, the way it vanished, and I keep wondering, how long was it watching before it got close enough to try me on? I'm not the kind of guy to believe in legends or supernatural stuff. I'm just someone who likes hiking alone, especially in the desert where things feel wide open and quiet in a way cities never are. The landscape is harsh but honest, no tricks, no illusions. At least that's what I thought. A few weeks ago, I decided to take a day hike in a stretch of desert not far from town. The plan was simple: pack light, bring enough water, and cover some rough trails I've never tried before. I wanted to clear my head away from people and noise. Around mid-afternoon, I spotted a coyote. Nothing unusual there, but something about this one felt off. It wasn't the casual, cautious, skittish animal. This coyote just stood still, watching me almost too calmly for the desert heat. Its fur was patchy in places, like it hadn't fully recovered from some kind of injury or illness. The eyes, I swear they were too sharp, too knowing, almost human in their expression. It didn't run away as I approached. It didn't even flinch. I stopped and watched it for a while. I wanted to be sure I wasn't imagining things. The coyote started moving slowly, not running but walking parallel to the trail I was on, keeping the same distance from me. I got the sense it wanted me to notice it, maybe even follow. Curious, I decided to keep track of it, keeping a careful eye while trying to keep some distance. It led me down a less defined path, rocky and uneven, the kind of terrain that needed full attention. I was so focused on the coyote that I wasn't paying attention to my footing. Halfway down the slope, my boot caught a loose rock, and I went down hard. Pain shot through my ankle and I cursed under my breath. But then something really strange happened. From somewhere behind me, and I swear it was the coyote, I heard a sound, a low guttural noise that almost sounded like laughter. Not the yip or howl I'd expect from a wild animal. It was slow and mocking. I scrambled to get up, my heart pounding, but the coyote was gone. I looked around frantically, but there was no sign of it anywhere. Just the empty desert, silent and still. I limped back to the main trail, keeping my eyes peeled, but I never saw that coyote again. Since that day, I've kept thinking about those eyes and that laugh. I looked up some local stories and came across Skinwalker legends, shapeshifters that mimic animals and humans, often tricking travelers or leading them astray. I'm not sure what I saw, but it wasn't just a coyote. Something about it didn't belong. And that laugh, well, it's something I won't forget anytime soon. I live alone in a single wide trailer about a half hour from town. Desert on all sides, nothing but sand, dry brush, and a few stubborn mesquites. Nearest neighbor's 2 miles off. I've been out here for about 6 years, long enough that the silence doesn't bother me. At least it didn't. The first night I woke up, I figured it was nothing. Just sat up in bed, no noise, no reason. Felt like someone had nudged me awake. I checked the clock, 3:12 a.m. I didn't think much of it until it happened again and again. 3 nights in a row, I woke up at exactly 3:12. Always simply awake, not from a sound, but suddenly alert, pulse up a little. Like my body knew something before my brain caught up. I even talked to my doctor, but beside my prediabetes, nothing else is wrong with me. On the 4th night, I stayed up, just to see. I sat in the kitchen, lights off, blinds cracked. The clock on the microwave read 3:11. I remember thinking how quiet it was. No wind, no coyotes, just the dry hum of the fridge and the tick of the second hand. At 3:12 exactly, there was 3 knocks on the front door. A soft, steady tap, tap, tap. I didn't move, didn't even breathe. The knocks didn't come again. Eventually, I got up and looked through the peephole. No one was there. I told myself it was wind, maybe thermal expansion popping something loose. But the next night, I heard it again. 3:12 a.m. on the dot. 3 slow knocks. I didn't open the door. This went on for over a week. I started recording it, set up a blink cam by the door. The audio on the camera caught the knocks, clear as day. 3 soft raps at 3:12 a.m. every night. The camera though? Nothing. Each night from 3:11:48 to 3:14:22, the footage glitched. Just a block of corrupted data, audio fuzz and no image. I even swapped out the camera, bought a brand new one. Same result. Normal footage before and after. But those 2.5 minutes every night are just gone. Then came the night I looked out the window. I don't even remember getting up. Just found myself standing by the kitchen blind staring out. The porch light was off and my eyes adjusted after a moment. And then I saw myself standing at the door. Not moving, not knocking, but standing there facing the door like I was waiting to be let in. It was me. Same height, same hoodie I'd worn that day, same stance. But something about it was off. The shoulders were too still. The way the head tilted just slightly wrong. I stepped back from the window. When I looked again, he was gone. I didn't sleep that night or the next. Since then, it hasn't stopped. Every night at 3:12 a.m., there's 3 knocks. I've stopped looking. I leave the porch light off, blinds shut, phone silenced. Doesn't matter. I still wake up every single night. I thought about leaving, but I've heard stories. Stories about things that follow you if you acknowledge them, if you let them in. I haven't told anyone. Not really. You're the first. But I can't keep this up much longer. I haven't slept through the night in weeks, and sometimes I hear it whisper now. Not words exactly, just a sound that's almost my voice, like someone rehearsing how to be me. I don't know what it wants, but I know one thing for sure. If I ever open that door, I won't be the one who walks away. When I bought this place, the crawl space wasn't even something I thought about. Just a dark gap under an old house. The kind of thing you ignore unless there's a plumbing issue. I moved in last fall. It's a 1960s ranch house on the outskirts of town, about a mile past where the streetlights stop. Quiet and remote enough to be peaceful, but close enough to town that I could still get takeout if I wanted. It was a good deal and it came with land, some sagebrush and dirt, a few mesquites. Maggie, my black lab, loved it right away. She's 5 now. Loyal, mellow, too smart for her own good. Follows me everywhere, and I mean everywhere. She won't even let me take the trash out alone. So when she started acting weird around the crawl space, I noticed. She'd stop by the hatch and stare, not sniffing like she was curious, just standing stiff, tail down, ears back, like she didn't want to go near it. Sometimes she'd growl low, almost to herself, and then wander off like she didn't want to know more. Then maybe 3 weeks ago, I started hearing things at night. I sleep light, so I catch a lot of little house noises. Pipes, wind under the eaves, boards shifting. But this wasn't that. It was right under my floor. Light scratching at first, maybe a rodent, then dragging sounds. One night it sounded like something heavy shifting its weight just below my bed. I actually got up and checked to make sure Maggie hadn't crawled underneath. She was in the living room, curled up tight, ears up and alert. I figured raccoons, maybe a possum. I didn't want to crawl under their blind, so I set up a couple of trail cams near the hatch, the kind with night vision and audio. The first 2 nights there was nothing, a few clips of wind pushing dry weeds around, 1 fox. But on night 3 around 2 a.m., something triggered the camera. A figure low to the ground, moved into frame. The infrared picked up the eyes first, bright white and wide, almost perfectly round. The thing was crawling on its elbows and knees. Its limbs were long and wrong, like they bent too far in some places and not enough in others. At one point it paused and leaned towards the lens. It didn't have a face, not really, just a shape, and the eyes. The audio picked up something too. It wasn't clear at first, just low static and shifting gravel. But then came a sound that made my stomach knot. It said, "Maggie." Same tone I use when I call her in from the yard. Soft, like I'm coaxing her. Only it wasn't my voice. It was close, too close. Same rhythm, same inflection, but off, flat, like someone trying to remember how to sound human. Maggie heard it too. She stood up from her spot by the door and growled. Not a scared growl, more like a warning, protective. I kept the volume low, but she didn't take her eyes off the floor for the rest of the night. That's when I started keeping a light on in the hall. A few days later, just after dusk, I let Maggie out back. I stood out by the door, same as always, sipping a beer and watching her sniff around the yard. Then I heard it, from the other side of the house near the crawl space. "Maggie." I called out instinctively, "Mags, get inside." She turned toward the door and then froze, because a second later we both heard it again. "Maggie." But this time it wasn't calling her from the crawl space. It was calling her from just beyond the tree line at the edge of the property. Same broken version of my copy voice, clipped and hollow. She bolted back inside and didn't leave my side for the rest of the night. I checked the crawl space cameras again the next morning. The lens on one had been knocked sideways. The other had recorded 5 seconds of audio. No image, just the sound of someone walking slowly under the house. I haven't told anyone. What do you even say? "Hey, I think there's someone pretending to be me under my house?" That's the kind of thing that gets you politely uninvited from group chats. I called an exterminator. He checked for signs of animal activity, droppings, fur, nests, and found nothing. He said it was dry as a bone down there. No signs of water damage or rot either. I didn't tell him about the footage. I haven't gone down there myself. I keep telling myself I will, maybe during the day, when everything feels more normal. But something in my gut keeps stopping me. Not fear exactly, just knowing that whatever it is, it doesn't want me to see it directly. I've started sleeping in the living room with Maggie curled up next to the couch. She doesn't growl anymore, not even when the pacing starts. She just lifts her head and listens. I do too. Every few nights around 2 a.m., I hear the slow drag of something crawling under the floor, a soft shuffle, a quiet whisper. And sometimes if I hold my breath and really listen, I hear my own voice call the dog. I've been driving long haul for over a decade, mostly through the Southwest, New Mexico, Arizona, bits of Utah and Nevada. You get used to the quiet out there, hours of nothing but headlights, scrub brush, and the faint rattle of desert wind against the cab. Weird stuff happens. Most truckers will tell you that. You chalk it up to sleep deprivation, monotony, whatever. You learn to ignore the things that don't make sense. But this one stuck with me. And the more I think about it, the more I wonder if I didn't run into something I shouldn't have. It started on a run east through New Mexico just past Animas, headed toward Columbus. I was maybe 30 minutes out from my next fuel stop, dead night around 2 a.m. No other traffic, no lights but mine. That's when I saw a man. He was standing on the side of the road near mile marker 237. Not waving, not thumbing for a ride, simply standing there, about 10 feet from the pavement facing the shoulder, head down, hands loose at his sides. I slowed down instinctively. I don't usually stop for people in the middle of nowhere, but something about his posture set off an alarm in my head. He didn't look injured, didn't look homeless either. Clean clothes, dark jeans, denim jacket, white shirt underneath. As I rolled past, I glanced in the mirror. He never moved, never looked up, just stood there with his head down like he was waiting for something to happen. On the return trip the next night, same stretch of highway, I passed the same spot at nearly the same time. And there was something there again, but it wasn't the man. It was a coyote. Lean, mangy looking, standing right at the edge of the shoulder, lit up by my high beams. Coyotes don't usually stare down trucks, but this one didn't flinch. It watched me approach, then slowly turned its head to follow me as I passed. And for just a second, I swear to God, its eyes caught the light in a way that made my stomach twist. They weren't glowing like normal animal eyes. They reflected light, sure, but the expression behind them, it reminded me of that man. It was too steady, too human. I tried to shake it off. I've seen my share of sick animals in the desert. They get weird when they're starving or injured. But I made note of the mile marker again, 237. Dispatch rerouted me through the same corridor a few nights later. Rockslide shut down my original route. I didn't argue, simply logged the change and rolled out after sunset. Somewhere around 2:10 a.m., I passed that stretch again. And the man was back, same clothes, same spot. This time he turned his head as I passed. Didn't look at me directly, but tilted his head like he was listening to something far off. I didn't like how still he was, so I sped up, turned the radio up, and kept my eyes forward. That's when my CB cut out. Dead air, no fuzz, no static, no nothing. I flicked through channels, checked the cable, even unplugged and reseated the mic. Still nothing, total blackout. But 10 minutes later, it crackled back like nothing had happened. I stopped at the Columbus station to fuel up and clear my head. I walked the loop around the truck like I always do. Everything seemed normal until I checked the side steps beneath the passenger door. There were dirt streaks across the step rail and smudges high on the door. Not like from road dust, but like handprints. Like someone had tried to climb up. No footprints in the dust below. No signs of someone walking off. Just those streaks. I checked my dash cam. Red light was on, indicating it had been recording. But when I played it back, there was a 4-minute gap from 2:07 to 2:11 a.m. Only static and glitchy black frames. Everything before and after was clear. That rattled me. I didn't sleep that day. Couldn't do anything but sit in the sleeper cab with the curtains drawn, trying to convince myself it was some tech issue. Corrupted file, maybe. Heat glitch. Anything but what it felt like. That something didn't want to be seen. The last time I passed that marker, I was westbound. I told myself I wasn't going to look. Just keep moving, put it behind me. That didn't work. I looked. No man this time, and no coyote either. There was something standing further back from the road this time, near a cluster of creosote bushes. I couldn't see details, only a tall shape. Wrong proportions, too long in the legs, shoulders hunched like it was trying to stand like a person, and hadn't quite figured it out yet. As soon as my lights hit it, it crouched. Not like it was hiding, more like it was watching, waiting for the cover of dark again. I skipped my next 2 dispatches, didn't give a reason. Told them I needed time off to deal with a family thing. That was a lie, but I couldn't bring myself to get back on the road right away. I live alone, no wife, no kids, just a little trailer near the edge of town. But being home didn't help much. 3 nights after I quit driving, my phone rang at 2:13 a.m. No caller ID, no sound when I picked up, just breathing. And then something else. A voice that sounded almost like mine, just distorted enough to be off. Cab 37, route repeating. I don't even use CB tags like that. That's not how I talk. I hung up and shut the phone off. I haven't seen the man since then. But once in a while, usually after midnight, I'll hear something out near the edge of my property. A shuffle like someone walking around through the gravel, slow and dragging their feet. Never comes close, never tries the door. But I get the sense it knows I saw it, and it's waiting for me to go back out on the road. I was 17 when it happened. It was my junior year and I had my license, a dented Ford Ranger. and just enough confidence to sneak out after midnight like I wasn't afraid of anything. My buddy Lewis lived way out on the edge of the res. One of those long, dusty roads where the houses are scattered like someone threw them out of a sack and just let them land. No streetlights, barely any fences, just sagebrush and hard-packed earth and silence. We used to hang out after his folks went to bed, talk about girls, music, college, all the usual stuff. That night he texted me late, said he couldn't sleep and had a fire going behind the shed. He told me to come by, so I did. I parked down the road and cut through the back trail. It was about a 10-minute walk, no big deal in the day, but different at night. The desert gets loud in a quiet way. Wind pushes dust through the brush, and every sound feels closer than it should. About halfway there, I stopped. I didn't know why exactly. It just hit me that everything was still. No bugs, no wind, no sound at all. Like the night was holding its breath. Then I saw it, just off the trail standing by a fence post. A coyote. I almost kept walking. We see them here all the time, but this one wasn't right. It wasn't sniffing the ground or pacing or acting nervous like most of them do. It was standing completely still. Its body pointed one way, but its head turned toward me, staring. I took a step, and so did it. I stopped again, and so did the coyote. The hairs on my arm stood up. I looked away for half a second, just a half a second, and when I looked back, it was gone. I didn't hear it run, didn't hear it move. It was simply vanished. I hustled the rest of the way to Lewis's place. By the time I got there, I could see the fire going out back, just like he said. He waved when he saw me. I sat down, tried to brush it off. I told him what I saw and he got quiet. "I wouldn't have come through that way," he said finally. I laughed it off, but he didn't. "You ever hear your name called out here at night?" he asked. "Don't answer it if you do." He said it in that tone people use when they're not joking, but didn't want to explain any further. We stayed out maybe another 20 minutes. I could tell he was distracted. He kept glancing toward the tree line. Around 1:30, I decided to head back. He offered to walk me to the road, but I told him I was good. I didn't want to act scared. About 5 minutes into the walk, I heard something behind me. At first, it sounded like footsteps, light, crunching the dirt. I stopped. There was nothing. Then I heard it again, only this time it wasn't footsteps. It was a voice. "Lewis?" it called. It sounded like me. I stopped breathing. It came again. "Lewis?" Not quite right. More like it was trying out the word, like it was chewing on it. I didn't run. I just kept my head down and walked as calmly as I could, even though every nerve in my body was screaming. I didn't look back, not even once. When I got to my truck, I got in and locked the doors. I sat there until the sun came up. I didn't even want to turn the engine over. I just waited. I didn't tell Lewis. I didn't tell anyone. But a few weeks later, I heard his cousin telling someone not to go out past the old water tank after dark. He said something about a coyote that walked too straight and didn't blink. And then he said, "Sometimes it calls your name, just to see if you'll answer." So I gotta tell you something wild that happened to my brother and me a few months back. We went on this backpacking trip, way out in a remote canyon in Arizona. What started as a cool adventure turned into something really messed up. It was our first night out there. The campfire was pretty much just embers, and my brother, Liam, was already out cold in his tent. But I couldn't sleep. I couldn't shake this weird, creepy feeling crawling all over me. The desert was super quiet, but it wasn't peaceful quiet. It felt heavy, like something was just waiting, listening. Then I heard it. I thought it was a coyote at first, but it was too close, and the howl sounded off, like someone trying to copy a coyote but not quite getting it right. It felt wrong. I tried to tell myself I was overtired, that the desert was playing tricks. I pulled my sleeping bag up tight and tried to drift off, but then came the scratching. Not like a little mouse or anything like that. This was slow, steady, right on Liam's tent. My breath hitched, I froze, and I listened. It stopped for a second and then started again, lower down, like fingernails dragging on the tent fabric, slow and steady. I whispered, "Liam?" But he didn't move. The scratching stopped, and then this low guttural sound started up. Not really a growl, more like a deep wet cough or a gurgle coming from right outside the tent. It felt like it vibrated through the ground under me. Seriously, it wasn't like any animal sound I'd ever heard. It sounded like it was struggling. My hands were shaking as I fumbled for my headlamp. I shined it from inside my tent over towards Liam's tent, mostly trying to scare whatever it was off. The sound was stopped and the quiet came back, even thicker. All I could hear was my heart thumping. I slowly, quietly slipped out of my tent. I pointed the light at Liam's tent flap, then slowly moved it to the ground. And that's when I saw the tracks. They weren't paw prints, they weren't human footprints either, but something in between. A big three-toed print, kind of like a bird's but with a strange long heel. And right next to it, faint but clear, were these shallow marks, like long thin fingers had dragged through the dirt. They looked like they led away from Liam's tent towards the dark canyon wall. A twig snapped behind me. I whipped around, the headlamp beam flying everywhere. But there was nothing, just the dark, huge shapes of the canyon walls. Then a whisper. It came on a sudden cold gust of wind that swept through the camp. It was my name, but it was Liam's voice, stretched out, distorted, like it was coming through a broken speaker. "Sarah." That sent a deep chill through me. Liam was still snoring loudly in his tent. I know his voice better than anyone. This was definitely not Liam. I stumbled backward, tripping over a root. My headlamp caught something at the edge of our camp, just outside the dim glow of the dying fire. It was tall, way too tall, and skinny. It stood on two legs, but its body was all wrong, hunched and angular. Its head was kind of like a dog's, but its eyes, they burned with this mean, smart light. They were too big, too human, and they stared right at me with this unsettling intensity. It took a step, then another. Its movements were jerky, disjointed, kind of like a puppet being pulled by some crazy person. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My throat was stuck. I stared, frozen still as it lumbered in the shadows. I could only see its outline in the glow of its eyes. Its head tilted again, like a curious dog, but it was just so creepy, so mocking. It stopped at the edge of my light, and I didn't get a full view of it. It didn't want to be seen. Finally, I snapped out of it and scrambled into Liam's tent, shaking him hard. "Wake up, we gotta go now." My voice was barely a whisper. Liam jolted awake, totally confused. "What's wrong?" "It's out there, we gotta run." That's all I could get out. He didn't ask questions. He must have seen the pure terror in my eyes, or felt how scared I was. He just grabbed his pack, and we busted out of the tent, leaving everything else behind. The creature was gone, but the air was thick with a strange damp smell that was acrid and burning in my nose. We ran blindly over the rough ground. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but the image of those glowing eyes and its unnatural movements kept me going. Every little rustle, every distant owl hoot sent jolts of pure terror down my spine, and I kept hearing that messed up version of Liam's voice whispering my name in my head, even though he was right beside me. We didn't stop until the first bit of dawn hit the sky. We eventually found this empty dirt road, and after what felt like forever, an old beat-up truck showed up. The driver, this old guy with a weathered face, simply looked at us, all messy and scared, and nodded. He opened the passenger door without saying a word. He didn't ask anything, and we sure didn't offer any explanations. As we drove off, the sun came up higher, making the canyon glow gold. It felt like it was pushing away the horrors of the night. But the quiet in the truck was heavy, full of my unspoken fear. We got a ride from a friend and picked up our stuff the next day, making sure to leave before it got dark. We've never really talked about that night, not properly, but it still haunts me even now, thinking how it imitated my brother's voice. That lingering feeling is just hard to shake.